All right, Charles, here we go. Another day, another hotel. Hopefully, the internet problems are behind us. This place has 10 times the speed of the last hotel I was at. How are you, Charles? How is the deterioration of New York going? We're just days away from this Excelsior Pass.
Exactly. And in offsetting news, I believe recreational marijuana use became totally legal
Mandatory?
here.
Oh,
Yeah, mandatory, legal, but in public as well.
what?
You
Wait,
could,
already? I
yeah.
thought they said 2022.
No, I thought maybe I misread it. I thought it's like today, and I may have it wrong, but apparently you can possess up to 3 ounces of weed here in New
Wow.
York, and you can smoke in public. So given the fact that we're defunding the police, we're letting not just minor criminals but serious criminals roam the streets, and when they do something, they don't spend time in jail. And then, of course, Biden's opening up the southern border, so we got those people streaming towards this sanctuary city and state. Um, this guy is doing a great job, the resident, not the president, the resident, of uh, trashing the economy. It's just amazing to me.
But Charles, this raises a question because as we walked around, people have heard me talk about the Weed World trucks, and then we saw that much more organized and established actual company, MedMen, which has ads all over in Los Angeles. They had a store there already. It seems like a pretty substantial risk for. I mean, MedMen is not General Motors. They probably make millions of dollars, but who's going and renting a space in New York City unless they know this is going to happen?
Well, I doubt it's a conspiracy that has this kind of contour to it, but if you trash the city and suddenly you've got lots of storefronts that are empty, then you actually imagine a scenario where the weed distributors get long-term leases at knockdown prices. And
Unbelievable.
to top it off, maybe it was all part of a grand plan when you noticed all these new pizza shops, right? So you got the weed, smoke that, you get the munchies, you go to the pizza
Right.
place. It's
Could be
genius.
perfect.
This is
Yeah.
probably all Hunter Biden's doing.
Oh, they're going to legalize crack next week.
I hope not. I hope not. But Jason, we always rush through and don't give enough credit to the wonderful work of the art department, particularly the illustration team and the color team and the various copy editors and all that. It's just as always a wonderful addition, Jason. The new poster for this rekindled edition of what we
Right.
tried to get through in the last time and what were brutally cut short by internet gremlins.
Yeah, well, and thank you for that kind compliment regarding the artwork, Charles. The funny thing is, there's a lot of people who actually believe what you say, including the National Academy of Television Arts and Sciences. They're flabbergasted. They want, all kinds of documents pertaining to the creation of these various parody images, but the entire art department consists only of me. And this is that movie. I actually didn't see this movie, Tower Heist,
It's
but
a great.
yeah, I'll have to check it out. But as you pointed out, we were unceremoniously completely cut off last week. And, unlike when I'm using my phone and you're there with me in the location, we can continue recording on the local device. And then I put out a director's cut, usually on subscribestar.com/crowdsourcethetruth or patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth. I couldn't do that because the internet totally failed at the cheapo hotel that I was at, and I couldn't even connect to you. So there was no show beyond the 30-minute thing that we did last Sunday, and people were confused and disappointed by that, as I was. So we're back to redo basically the whole thing now, and I think that people are going to be amazed by some of the information that you've uncovered. I changed around the image a little bit, Charles, because in my experience, when we just do a take two, a lot of people think they're seeing the same video again, but today this is a totally new video. We've added President Stupid Joe, and
That's
his
resident.
yes,
Resident.
resident Dumb Joe and Kamala. Oh God, it's Charles. This is a nightmare that we're living.
It is. It's like a bad episode of Saturday Night Live. I mean, to think that Dumb Joe he's ready to go. He's been working in Washington D.C. He said in his press conference he got to the Senate 120 years ago. Imagine Donald Trump had said that. I got to the White House 120 years ago. I mean, it'd be nonstop. 120. There'd
Yeah.
be memes 120. There'd be T-shirts of 120. Um, he'd be smoking 420 while he was saying 120. I mean, and here Joe says that, and then he decides that the situation at the border is complex enough, and after dithering and dathering and waiting, that he's got to appoint as point person Kamala Harris to be on top of it, and she doesn't do anything. And then recently was asked, "Are you going to go to the border?" And she said, "Nah, never
Well,
mind."
she said she's
Cackling.
not doing the border. Somebody else is doing that. That's
Yeah, I don't
just a
do borders.
mistake.
I don't do artichokes or borders. I just don't. You know. And
Do you dislike artichokes?
well, I'm talking. She doesn't. I don't mind artichokes, but
Does
she
Kamala Harris dislike artichokes? Is this going to disrupt the artichoke industry like broccoli versus George Bush?
I'm just making that part of it, but we'll
Oh.
see. We'll see how long that lie flies around the world before the truth has a chance to catch up. But seriously, on the poster itself, it's quite clever because I think this heist, this power heist, is something that didn't just start even in 2019, or for that matter, in 2015. I think for a long period of time here, in particular, possibly going as far back as Kennedy, maybe before Kennedy, people behind the scenes have self-appointed custodians of, in their minds, virtue, have seen fit to believe that they and their allies can just thwart the will of the people in election after election. So we don't really know the whole story yet on the JFK assassination. The most credible case I've heard is that Lyndon Johnson was actually very much involved in that. You're an expert on that area. I'm not. You go through Watergate and you ask yourself, do we really understand how and why Nixon was removed? Then you get into the Reagan election. Well, you get into actually before that, you get into the Reagan election and the questions around how much of the leadership was Reagan and how much of it was H.W. Bush. Then you get into the issue of H.W. Bush, who was actually, I think his popularity was at 90% when he liberated Kuwait in 1991, only to lose unceremoniously to the combination of H. Ross Perot siphoning out 19% of the popular vote and Bill Clinton, who was a horribly compromised person and remains even more so. So that now you're through H.W. Bush and Clinton. Now you've got W. Bush, questions about his lingering questions, frankly, escalate in my mind the more I look at it, into his convoluted finances and that of his extended family while he was president and afterwards. Which brings you to Barack Obama. We don't need to reprise all of those issues because many books have been written about it and movies and other considerations. That's before we get to Barack Obama's own book, which was, I mean, it's tough to decide which is a better doorstop. Bill Clinton's book, Hillary Clinton's book, George W. Bush's book, or Barack Obama and Michelle Obama's books. I mean, they're about as interesting as reading the instruction book for in Korean English of a Samsung telephone. I mean, they're really not all that interesting at all, where there should be a lot of meat. Anyway, so you get through Obama, then you have Donald Trump, and really for Donald Trump's entire presidency, even before the night of the election, plans, I think, were put into place early morning to thwart his presidency, to do level best to get him out. And they were not able to stop him from doing some very good things, but everything that he's done by executive order, Dumb Joe has already reversed and more. And we're also now learning day by day. There was a result in Montana. They did a small sample of votes in what is typically a red state and discovered that the vote tallies were in a certain portion of Montana may have been swung favorably to Biden 6%, which is a massive switch in a red state. And we're seeing more and more.
I just want to interject real quick, Charles. I don't want you to not say it, but the very fact that you just made that comment could be utilized by YouTube as grounds to, strike the channel. The Jason Goodman channel has received a strike, so we aren't broadcasting at our first full capacity right now. And I just bring it up to remind people who are watching, even if you've never done this before, if you could share the video, email it to friends, family, post it on YouTube or Facebook or Twitter or wherever you like to post, that will really help this information get out there. Charles, YouTube has been doing everything it can to suppress the reach of any video that's produced here on Crowdsource the Truth.
Right. But I was just really speaking to the title, the Power Heist title, which is that I think in America's recent election history, going back decades, I mean, not just the last year, there have been, in my mind, many examples not investigated closely enough where it seems likely that election fraud had a material impact on the ultimate results. Here, I mean, the 2012 election, I don't think has been studied closely enough to understand just how many Romney votes may have been not counted or taken away, and how much the Obama vote total may have been increased. We don't know that yet. And I just looking at just simply as a math person, looking at the facts, looking at the trends, election by election by election, I think we're being fed a bunch of BS about what truly happened in multiple elections. And I also think it's pretty clear to me that where in the ancient past, in parts of the American South, there's no question that folks tried to suppress all kinds of votes, female vote, black vote, whatever, not just in the American South. So there have been efforts to do that, coming principally from the Democrat side in the South. And then it has also happened, I'm sure, in the Republican side. And what we should be, either we should just say, look, let's go back, let's call up Mad King George III, or whatever his name was, his ancestors, or Queen Elizabeth, and say, look, you got a bonehead in King Charles, Prince Charles. The next generation down seems to be locked in squabbles. Tell you what we're going to do. Why don't you make somebody in England our king or queen, or pick a different pronoun? Let's just go back to the system where your vote doesn't matter. Let's just acknowledge it, that we're creating an aristocracy, a monarchy, political dynasties that decide whether it's Clinton or Bush, Obama, you name it, Trump even, that are going to decide who gets the spoils and who runs this country. I don't think thinking people across the political spectrum want that. I just don't. I think it's people who can benefit by paying off compromised dynasties, either to get fat cat contracts and or to avoid being prosecuted for heinous crimes. So this is not a subject that we should just be shy about discussing. I mean, after all, the Democrats spent, the progressive wing of the Democrats spent all of Trump's presidency, even before he was being inaugurated, and all the days thereafter, suggesting that Trump wasn't the legitimate president. Hillary Clinton herself, to this day, still says she's the legitimate president. Stacey Abrams is the legitimate governor. They're allowed to say that kind of stuff, but don't you dare raise questions about.
Did they strike Hillary's YouTube channel, Charles, for saying that?
I don't think anybody's watching Hillary's YouTube channel, but
wait, let me ask you really quickly. Sorry to interrupt. We got a little bit of a delay here, but let me just ask you really quickly about this, because it struck me as super odd. In addition to being kind of a dope, isn't Meghan Markle the Duchess of something or other, and can't a member of the British royal family not run for president? Like, what is going on with this?
I don't know what I don't spend a lot of time thinking about her or the royal family, actually. But I think that she was born in the United States. Question is, were both her parents born in the United States? I don't know the answer to that question.
But I
And
mean, if you become a member of another royal family of another country, particularly the one that this country was founded to escape from, shouldn't there be some way to prevent you from running for president?
well, the issue is, did she reject her U.S. citizenship to become a UK citizen? That I don't know.
Hmm.
If she did that, she very clearly cannot be president. If, on the other hand, she just was an American married to an important British person who stood in line to the throne before he was cast out of the royal family, I don't know. I mean, I think she could clearly get elected. She's probably, if Hunter Biden is the smartest person Joe Biden knows, then he obviously hasn't met Meghan Markle, because she's probably, you know, a Nobel Prize winner in intellect compared to Hunter Biden, who, by the way, has a
Hmm.
book coming out, excerpts of which have been leaked, where he goes into great detail about how he began his life of alcohol abuse and then drug abuse. Apparently, it began at age 8 drinking champagne. Now,
Wow.
as a kid, Joe Biden was in charge of Hunter at age 8. So what was he doing feeding champagne to an 8-year-old? But anyway,
Which is real quick on Meghan Markle, Charles. It seems that USA Today believes that she could run for president under certain conditions. Oh, we'll have to read this. She needs
at
Oprah
USA
to
Today, you mean
nominate her.
I refer to as McPaper.
Yeah.
I never got that. I never understood why the surface level information that you tend to find in newspaper summaries is too much for the population. And so you should have these stories that are like 50 words long, which is the bulk of McPaper. But anyway, we've
Hmm.
got a lot to cover, Jason, on
Yeah,
the.
let's get into that stuff.
Okay. So let's start by just refreshing people's recollection about the important fact that a tax exempt entity has to be an entity. It has to be a formal association, corporation, or trust. It cannot be a loose association of a changing complexion of individuals, and it's got to be formalized. And it's got to, once it gets formalized, only after it becomes formally, if it's going to be a corporation, not simply incorporated, but organized as a free, non-for-profit corporation, only then can an entity file an application for federal tax exemption that must be true and complete in all material respects. So there's a history, therefore, on any purported tax-exempt organization. Some of the history can get buried if it goes way back, as these entities we're about to talk about do go way back, but inevitably there are records. And these records can be combed, and thoughtful people on the right and the left can, after doing some work, reach a conclusion whether or not the American Conservative Union and the American Conservative Union Foundation, in fact, exist today as lawfully organized nonprofit corporations that, since their purported date of incorporation or organization, have always been operated truthfully within the law. Let's not get off of the Vallejo one for a second, Jason. It's okay.
Nobody can see this but you, Charles. I'm
Oh,
doing
okay.
some behind the scenes stuff.
All right. Okay, then work away. So, in the case of the American Conservative Union, which is supposedly the oldest entity of the two, that is what's called or it's supposed to be a 501c4. That's an entity that can engage in some indirect political activity. They have to be careful in how they report such entities, C4s. They do actually have to file an application. And I checked that a C4, the origins of a C4 date back to the early 1913, 17 timeframe. It is an old form of organization. So if this thing actually, that is to say the American Conservative Union, actually was organized as a 501c4, there should be a Form 1024 available for us to look at to see what did the people who tried to get this thing organized as a 501c4, what did they say about the history of the American Conservative Union? When was that thing founded? If you look through press accounts, and if you look through 990s for the American Conservative Union, you come away with declarations that are just frankly stupid. I mean, they are the 990s that say this thing was organized in 1973. Well, it couldn't have been organized in 1973 if the first sign we have of it being incorporated and organized in Washington D.C. and filings that have been sent using the mail across state lines. So you're using the mail, committing fraud. If you say the thing was incorporated and organized in your state level filings in 1979, then you shouldn't be saying on the 990 that it was formed in 1973. And given the difference, definitely on the 1024, where you're trying to get the exemption from federal taxation, in the history section, it should make all this clear. Now, I put up Buckley versus Vallejo, and I got to say, Jason, the happenstance way in which we're going after this, that you just got, you'd gotten kicked out of CPAC when you had a ticket, has opened a rich vein for me reconsidering the issue of free speech and political speech. Buckley versus Vallejo, I'm not a lawyer. According to this Wikipedia entry, it resulted at the time they were doing this entry in the longest known Supreme Court decision. It's apparently, I obviously haven't read it.
Longest, you mean the length of the written document,
right,
or how long it took to
right.
get there?
Well, it's a very contentious set of issues. This thing was, you'll see as you go down, it says that the original lawsuit was filed January 2nd, 1975. Now, Jason, is January 2nd, 1975 before 1979?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm going with yes.
A little bit. But anyway, as you go down, you'll see it says that the suit was filed in that date, and it says a little bit further down, I think it says the parties, there it is, January 2, 1975. Who are the parties who joined in this lawsuit?
Well, it's James Buckley, who was a senator at the time.
And is a casual friend of mine, even though if he's still alive, he's in his late 90s at this point, and he's a very smart guy. Bill Buckley.
Well, also members of the Conservative Party of New York State, former U.S. Senator and 1968 presidential candidate Eugene McCarthy, a Democrat from Minnesota, New York Civil Libertarians Union, American Conservative Union.
Stop right there. So this lawsuit was filed on January 2nd, 1975, in theory by American Conservative Union, which did not bother to get incorporated until organized in D.C. Until 1979, according to multiple filings that we're going to show you in a second. So you would think, I mean, maybe lawyers are basically just not good with numbers and dates and chronologies, but there's some pretty freaking smart lawyers that looked on both sides of the aisle at the set of issues here. And in brief, as I understand the issues, on the one hand, we have not an absolute freedom of speech, but we have quite a lot of freedom to speak in this country, even today, notwithstanding the tech oligarchs who are trying to grind us into and stamp you out of existence. At YouTube, we nonetheless today still have quite extensive rights. And folks back in the day, at the time of this lawsuit was launched, were angered by the creation of the Federal Election Commission, and by a law that had been passed a number of years before 1975, that did indeed attempt to restrict political speech, to curtail it, and to curtail spending on political speech. So this was quite an important set of issues, really going to the heart of what conservatism stands for. People argue different things about what the Bill of Rights the various amendments, which is the most important amendment. Some say that if you don't have freedom of religion, then you don't have freedom at all. You can't decide what.
Oh, no, we lost Charles. Damn it. Charles? But the internet is still working. You're
Yeah,
back.
no, I got a call. I got a call, and I just had to get rid of it.
Okay, no problem. So if you don't have
Sorry
freedom
about
of religion, you have no freedom at all.
Exactly. Some would say that's the most important freedom. If you can't decide yourself whether you want to believe in God, and if so, how you want to commune with God, then how much freedom do you have in any sense? And another would be if you can't express yourself, as freedom of speech is all about, then how can you hope to debate the weighty issues of the day? How can you hope to stand up to an overzealous government, et cetera, et cetera? So this whole issue of that was decided in Buckley v. Vallejo ripples through to the present day when McCain-Feingold was passed, another attempt to limit the pro McCain-Feingold people would say to limit the influence of big money in elections, and the anti-McCain-Feingold people might say, no, this is yet another set of abuses as happened early in the 1970s. Buckley v. Vallejo made things perfectly clear. And again, in Citizens United, the Citizens United case, which I think was decided in 2010, again, those who would try to regulate or to limit our ability to express ourselves when it comes to politics suffered another blow, which, of course, if you'll remember, Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton and others bemoaned the Citizens United decision. Barack Obama, I think it was either his first or his second inaugural, it might have been his second inaugural, or second speech to the State of the Union, first or second one, he made some negative comments about this decision. Must have been in 2010 or 11. And I think it was Alito, and I think a congressperson called him out and said, "You lie." And the guy who, I think it was it Wilson, who called him out? The person who yelled that out was of course raked over the coals by our cancel culture media for daring to criticize Barack Obama in the middle of his speech. When actually, I think when the President of the United States gets up and addresses the United States and the people of the world, he has an opportunity, he or she ultimately will have an opportunity to mold a lot of minds and to send out things that are absolutely false, but not to have, for the public not to have the ability to say, wait a minute, what this guy said, even though he's the president, is dead wrong, is a problem. So when we get to this whole issue of freedom of speech, freedom of religion, the principles that those who claim to be conservatives in the American Conservative Union and the American Conservative Union Foundation, these are weighty issues, weighty debates. And the last thing one would want to see, which I fear we are seeing, and we will get more fully exposed as we go through and flesh out my working hypothesis here, is that unfortunately people, let's say charitably, who are sloppy and don't bother to actually get into the rules and regulations, and or brigands who would like to see the American Conservative Union, which is in theory the oldest and preeminent conservative operation, tax-exempt operation in the United States, people who would like to see that entity harmed and the conservatism harmed may well be lurking still inside these two entities. And I serve this up now that I've spent maybe 2 weeks on it. I'd be happy to debate anybody associated with the American Conservative Union, the American Conservative Union Foundation, including their accountants and their lawyers, because just the questions I would ask them will put them, and I am going to ask them over time, will put them in an impossible position. They will have to either say that I'm wrong staring facts in the face and law in the face and look stupid, or admit that I'm right and look stupid because they didn't correct a set of issues which has been ongoing for a long, long time. So with that, Jason, let's take people through some of these public filings again. Remember I said the American Conservative Union, we're going to show people that it came together in 1979. That is to say, remember the Clinton Foundation, we go on and on and on about incorporating does not mean that you've organized. You've got to incorporate, then you've got to come together. Directors have got to amend the incorporators' work, come together as a formal board of directors, and if they're going to operate under whatever the law is of either DC or a state or location, you actually have to, the initial directors or trustees, whatever they're called, have to adopt bylaws as well. Otherwise, you're not organized. So if we look at if we can go into ProPublica, Jason, and look at the American Conservative Union, for starters, and look at their filings.
So we'll go directly to the nonprofit profile. Any words? There's something in here that says, find a nonprofit, all these words in the name. American Conservative Union or Foundation?
Yep. Union. This is the one I just referred to that we were going to show people was incorporated and then articles adopted and bylaws adopted in 1979. So if we pull up for the 990s, one of the older 990s for this that's on ProPublica, I think goes back to what, does it go back to, anywhere at random in there, just the oldest one.
Looks like 2003 is the oldest one here.
Well, look at 2003. Just pull up that one, download that one, and on the front page of it, it's going to show you when, at the very top, it's going to show when it was incorporated. Sort of like 4 or 5 lines down in the middle. Might be to the left a little bit.
Yeah,
not as far down as.
Not this far down?
Yeah, if you don't see it in the 2003 version, go to the most recent one that's up there, 2019, I think it is. Because there, it'll make the same point. If we can get that one.
Whoops. Yeah, I'm dealing in no thanks. Okay, 2019.
The most recent one, I think it's 19.
Okay.
There at the very top, it should say, you should see in like the 4th or 5th or 6th line in the middle right, you should see Virginia. It's incorporated in Virginia in is it in DC? You see that? See it right there? It says
Alexandria, Virginia, Matt Schlapp. No?
Right-hand side. Just leave it right there, right above the received, stamp there. You'll see date of year of formation. What year does it say? You see the received.
1964.
So if it was formed in 1964, this is the American Conservative Union, where does it say it was formed?
DC.
And what, to the right of it, it says DC, I think, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So now let's go. This is their most recent filing, filed under penalties of perjury, not only filed in Ogden, Utah, which is not in Alexandria, Virginia. So somehow it had to get from Alexandria, Virginia to Ogden, Utah. And you'll notice that the accountant is based in Maryland, so he had to sign it in Maryland, I think. Another person signs it in Virginia. So there's a lot of paper going across state lines. And then this paper is then filed, this 990 is filed in multiple states and locations, for multiple different reasons. But here you're saying this thing was formed in 1964 in Washington, D.C. You haven't gotten even halfway down the first page of the freaking document, and you don't know when you were actually formed. So now we'll go, Jason, to the Attorney General, Massachusetts Attorney General charity. If you just punch those three things in, we'll get to some of these formation documents.
Yeah.
And if you just punch in, once you get to the search thing, you just punch in American Conservative Union, and we'll be able to pull up what they told the state of Massachusetts or the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. This site, by the way, I'm doing it this way for the benefit of the audience, so you, the audience, can do this yourselves. You can look at what I'm saying. There are going to be people in the audience, many people who are smarter than I am, who understand these charity rules better than I do, and will be able to see things that I don't see. But here you have two sets of filings in Massachusetts. If you punch in the one there, you notice they call it the American Conservative Union, Inc. And this harkens back to the Clinton Foundation stuff, where we have multiple different ways of describing different Clinton Foundation entities with slightly different names, sometimes with "the" in it, sometimes not with "the," sometimes with "Inc., sometimes without "Inc., sometimes at the correct address, sometimes at the wrong address. So these are all the hallmarks of potential charity fraud. You have multiple different entities claiming to be associated with something that seems legitimate, and lots of people around these entities, be they fundraising agents, accountants, or executives, able to open up accounts that may receive money and then get siphoned off, as we'll see, as we'll remind people, has definitely happened with regard to this mess. So if we look at the American Conservative Union, Inc., you hit that link, you get, and at the very bottom, you'll see, goes back, you'll notice, all the way to, what, 1997?
Yeah.
Okay, and above, just for fun, that's the financial audit for 1997, I think?
It says FIN state audit.
Right, let's hit that one and show people some interesting things. If we download that, that's something that suggests that this thing existed in 1997, the American Conservative Union, that is. And once I don't know if you have a TIFF reader there on.
I have everything, Charles.
You're amazing.
But how do we get it full screen is the question. Hang on one second here. Okay.
So this is something, if you hit the next page, I think you're going to have to go page by page. Yeah, that's the table of contents. Who is the letter signed by?
Who is that?
This is John Holsinger, the guy who later, in my view, completely screws up the filings for really 8, 9, 10, and 11. But does this say this thing has been audited? Right above his signature, that paragraph?
Well, it says, in our opinion, the financial statements referred to above present fairly in all material respects the financial position of American Conservative Union as of December 31st, 1997, and the results of its operations and its cash flows for the year then ended. I don't know, does that...
No, because does it say in conformity with generally accepted American accounting principles?
Well, yes.
I don't think it does. Does?
It
okay.
says, well, it represents the operations and cash flow for the year ended in 1997 in conformity with generally accepted accounting principles. And it further up says we conducted our audit. It's talking about an audit for sure. Independent auditor's report.
All right. So we'll get to whether this person is independent and an auditor or a tax preparer and not so independent. But if we go past the financial statement pages, there's going to be 2 or 3 of them, to the footnotes. What does the footnote say about the organization? It should, I can't read it from here, but
well,
yeah,
this is notes.
It says
to financial.
At the very top, it says the association. You'll notice it doesn't say corporation. It says the association
is exempt.
What is that?
So
what is it?
Number 2, significant accounting policies, income taxes. The association is exempt.
No. The first paragraph. It says.
Okay, nature of activities. Oh, yes, it says the American Conservative Union, hereinafter the association, is a corporation organized under the laws of the District of Columbia for the purpose of educating the public regarding various political issues. That's interesting.
Yeah. So
I know
it's
somebody
the
else.
first. We don't know whether it's an association or a corporation, or maybe Holsinger doesn't know whether it's a corporation or an association. But this is a document that was put out in 1997. Okay. For some reason, we don't have a similar document for 98 or 99. We'll show you other documents later. But if you now go back into the table of contents for this stuff in Massachusetts, Jason, you'll see above this entry, the
Yeah.
list. What's to the left here? You have. I can't read to the left of 2000. What is there? I can't see it on my screen. It
It's
describes.
PC IRS 990.
No, okay. What about you see organizational documents or?
Well, state audit, annual report, 990, annual report, other miscellaneous for
There you go,
2009.
2009. Yeah, look, 2009. The first. Download the first one. Now in 2000, they skipped from 2001 to 2009. And then I think what they did is they stopped reporting, even though they were soliciting inside Massachusetts and across the country. They leave out all kinds of reports, and then they file here. I think is this
Now, wait a
articles
minute,
of
did that open it? Didn't open it. Sorry, give me just a second here.
Sure.
It's I'm in a.
You may need to close the old one.
Yeah.
Yeah. And now if you open the new one.
There we go.
Okay. Now what is this?
So this thing.
That's a determination letter, right? Fake determination letter.
It says, well, February 15th. Is this the wrong thing?
No, this is the fake determination letter.
Right.
We talked about this one before.
Internal Revenue Service.
Is that all that's there? Just this determination letter?
Well,
if you go down, if you go to the final page of this one.
Of this?
Of the document that you had just opened.
Okay.
The third page there. It says at the very bottom, I think, that this is good through April 1st, 1977, right?
Let's take a look at it. Well, I don't know. Where is it saying that?
Yeah, right there. You've got it right there. Listen.
Oh, yes. April 1st, 1977.
All right. So this could not possibly be retroactive to a date before which the entity was organized. We're going to show you that it was organized in 1979. But here's a letter which we've talked about before is deeply suspicious for many reasons, including differences in font and things we've been over in prior broadcasts. But this purports to be something from the IRS saying that this was tax exempt back to April 1st, 1977, the date this ceased becoming a committee. So if we go back into the document list there, Jason, we get out of this document, go back in.
Yeah.
We'll see, and I think you have to close that one.
There we are.
The document underneath it, what is that? In 2009, you did the first one.
2001. We're missing
there are 2
years
sets of documents in 2009.
Oh, you're right.
You did the second one. Let's look at that. From memory, that may be the Articles of Incorporation. If not, it'll be above it. Yeah, Oh no, this is an agreement where they're transferring the relationship that the entity had with a fundraising from one fundraising agent to another. And this is something we're going to go over in another broadcast. But people who are familiar with fundraising documents should take a look at this, and I'll have a lot more to say about this in upcoming broadcasts.
Technical
It's
services
material,
agreement.
yeah. So what happens is, and we'll get into this in some depth today. What happens is that organizations that want to fundraise using direct mail employ a raft of fundraising consultants, in some cases solicitation agents, a consultant being somebody who just advises. A solicitation agent can be somebody who actually collects the money and holds it for the organization's behalf. And their responsibilities, in theory, imposed by the states and also by, I think, federal law, how you do that. You can't have a crooked organization hire a reputable solicitation agent and have the solicitation agent go out there across state lines using the mail, send out 1 million pieces of mail, collect 10 million bucks, steal 9 million bucks, and give the organization a million. That's something you're not supposed to be able to do.
You can't do
So the
that.
question, no, you're not supposed to be able to do that. It's a very serious set of offenses. And if you find yourself in the middle of such an exercise, let's say you are an organization that sounds great on paper, but is sloppy as all get out, and the solicitation agent, let's say, is reliable and lawful and can't possibly check the legal status day by day of this organization, relies on representations and warranties from the organization itself that it is lawfully organized and operated at all times, carries out its business, then to its shock and horror discovers that, wait a minute, it's actually, this organization is not even an organization. Now everybody associated with that project is in serious potential legal jeopardy, and that can be maybe mitigated at a moment in time where, if it's a conservative organization, let's say the federal government, the IRS, and the Department of Justice are run by conservative Republicans, maybe you get a pass. But you shouldn't get a pass, in my mind. If you're going to break the law, we got to come down hard on you. Not should get the cover from a conservative president that you wouldn't get from a progressive president. It shouldn't work that way. The law is the law, and it should be applied equally. So if we go to the thing above it, Jason, the whole question, we've heard now this thing, the American Conservative Union, either it started in 1964 or started in 1973, or it was doing Buckley versus Vallejo in 1975. If you hit in that next one, the first of the three links, I think, should be the Articles of Incorporation.
Yeah. Bylaws, it says. PC articles org/bylaw. So,
Right. So the first one will be the Articles. Okay. And it's lengthy. It'll take a look. We're going to see some interesting type fonts here. We're going to go back to a different time. Yeah, here we go. So what is this? This is from February 10th, 2016. 6, rather.
Let's take a look here.
It's at the top left. This is coming from the District of Columbia, saying this is a true copy of the Articles of Incorporation. And at the top left, I can't see the
February 10th, 2006.
Right. So for another time, I will take people through why this is fake. This could not possibly have been amended in the way they amended it. They claim they amended it. But if we scroll quickly, this is the version they've been passing off since February 10th, 2006 as being lawfully amended Articles of Incorporation for the American Conservative Union. And at the end of it, you'll see an older version. Keep going down. What is this? That says Articles of Incorporation, right?
Well,
at the top.
Yes. Well, the other one said amended.
Right. So these are the original. When you see articles, that should mean those are the first articles that were adopted. Okay. And you look at the preamble to this, in the very beginning of it, it says that a bunch of us got together as incorporators. to incorporate this American Conservative Union. And at the end of it, you can see the date where they did this.
Oops. It's at the bottom there.
It's going to be several pages in.
Oh, that's when it's filed.
Well, what date was it filed? It's filed in D.C.
Yeah. It looks like June 28th, 1979.
Right. Is that after 1975 or before 1975?
I think it's a little bit after.
Is it after 1973?
I think so.
How
I think
about
it's even after 1977.
How about 64? So
I think it's after all that.
To remind people about the defects in the Clinton Foundation filings, a bunch of people can get together and decide that they want to incorporate something, but depending on the location law, it's not actually incorporated until you file the Articles of Incorporation in the location. So they don't bother to file this until June of 1979. These are the articles. And remember from our Clinton Foundation work, filing Articles of Incorporation does not mean you're incorporated. I mean, you're organized, rather. You're just incorporated. You have not come together. You haven't established the rules by which you're going to run this place. And you have to do that to have what's called an organization, to pass the organizational test. It's not called the incorporation test. It's called the organizational test. So here you see evidence, hard evidence that has been filed, not simply in Massachusetts, but in many U.S. states using the mail across state lines, where people purporting to represent the American Conservative Union are speaking out of both sides of their mouth. They're saying it was either formed in 1964 or it was formed in 1979. It can't be both. You can go back into the Jason, if you can go back into the list of documents and do the second one down in that same grouping, that's the bylaws. And you'll see that bylaws were adopted after June 1979, slightly later.
Sorry, it's a little slower to deal with stuff just because of...
And again, these are bylaws that I think a rigorous analysis by lawyers will come to the conclusion that these were not lawfully amended either, but they state they were amended on the same date, on the 10th of February 2006. They go on and on and on, these bylaws, but you get to the original version after we scroll through these many pages, and there are quite a few pages. And here, what you have to worry about is, there are many things you have to worry about, but one thing you have to worry about is the bylaws cannot contradict the articles. The articles are what the people get to see. You don't normally get to see, as a member of the public, the bylaws. So you can't, as the Clintons have tried to do, gut a tax-exempt entity by inserting provisions in the bylaws that are not in the Articles of Incorporation and also aren't lawful. Okay, that I guess that's the original one. The amended one, Jason, with its litany of supposed changes. And I guess the third document in that grouping, this is the second one, could be the original bylaws. The third one. We'll see. Yeah. And we can look at the end of this one and see the date. What is the date?
Well, it looks like it's been signed 1991, October 10th,
Oh, no,
28th.
That's that same agreement. Was it the amended bylaws beforehand? The first page?
It says
But,
Articles of Incorporation. Doesn't say amended bylaws.
well, it's possible that you need to close out one of them to get the third one back.
Let's just make sure we've got the right document here, because this is a little confusing. So we're on this
2009.
2009 Articles of Organization / bylaws. So when I click on download here,
that should show us the original bylaws.
okay, so it's downloaded this. We click that. It brings up Articles of Incorporation.
All right.
That document we were just looking at.
Well, let's leave it for now. I'll tell you that when I look through it, it definitely shows that the bylaws were adopted after the articles in 1979. So the earliest date that you can claim American Conservative Union came together as an organization is June, July 1979. Certainly not 1964 and certainly not 1973. That's step one. So if we go into, let's go for a second into staying on the American Conservative Union. Let's go to the NC charity search. And that's while Jason's pulling that one up, the NC charity search is one of the best sites I've seen so far. Another good one is somebody we'll talk about in a second or a few minutes clued me into is the Washington State Secretary of State's site. But these are interesting sites because they provide much more detail than you get out of California or you get out of New York or Massachusetts. You get the actual correspondence with the charity. So here, as well as supporting documents, here, if you punch in American Conservative Union or hit the link to American Conservative Union, and then at the bottom of what pops up, you'll see filing history. It's the first entry at the bottom. And I'm seeing kind of the right-hand side of what you see. I don't see the
document filings.
Yeah, that's what you want. All right, so you hit that. Look at the oldest one.
Whoop.
Sorry, document filings, I guess what happened there?
It goes in reverse. So it starts with 2009, I think.
Yeah, 2009, and you see there's a denial letter.
Denied.
Yeah. Now, it probably solicited the American Conservative Union and American Conservative Union Foundation probably solicited in 2009 in North Carolina, and we'll get to show you that in a second. But if you hit the link here for denial,
the folder?
Yeah. Up will pop a large number of additional links.
Right.
And one of them will be application.
Articles, application.
So if we hit application, we'll see, I forget if this one, there's a cover letter from our great friend Otis. But this is an application. What is this now, Jason?
This is North Carolina Department of the Secretary of State Charitable Solicitation Licensing.
Right.
Initial licensing application.
Right, and it says in handwriting, you're on it, and sort of to the left of the bottom of the screen, you see this says it was formed in D.C. in 1979, right?
Yeah. Are you incorporated? It says yes. State of incorporation, D.C. Date of incorporation, 1979. Fiscal year end, 31/12.
Yeah, that's European, December 31.
That's weird.
And this says, if you go down the page for what's the date of this?
That's at the bottom.
I think you'll see at the top.
Oh yeah, it
There's
says completed date
yeah.
2/27/2009.
All right. So this is being submitted February 27th, 2009. And if we go down the page there's a section that says, have you ever been disciplined? And you can either hit yes or no answer. You'll see it if you scroll further down, I think, the page. Has your license ever been suspended or revoked? Have you ever been in an administrative proceeding?
It's difficult for me to read where I'm sitting as well. It says, have you ever had your authority denied, suspended, or revoked by any government agency? They say no.
Right. And they make other defective, as in false, materially false statements in this filing in February of 2009, knowing full well, as we'll show you in a second, that they were subjected to many instances, including in response to this application. This application goes in, and they're denied. Okay.
Yeah.
Does it say? All right. If we go further in, sorry, back into the links for this particular filing for the NC search
result. Just go back. See, I gotta click all these tiny little things that are obscured in a variety of different ways. Maybe we don't need this. Okay, there we go.
All right, so if one of those there is there, it says correspondence out or cover letter or something.
Right here, correspondence out.
All right, what does that say?
It says
Ixnay.
Yeah, it's 2009. Dear David Keene, Charitable Solicitation Licensing Division has received and reviewed your license application for licensure as a charitable organization or sponsor. For the reasons listed below, you are denied a license until you are in compliance with the Charitable Solicitation Act and the rules. Failure to comply with 131F-6A as follows: failure to have the form signed by either the treasurer or chief fiscal officer of the charitable organization or sponsor. Failure to comply with
Let me stop you right there. The reason no financial officer would want to sign this is that David Keene's ex-wife had been in charge of the records, and they knew by this time, according to the information that we've now seen in Pacer, they knew by June of 2009 that David Keene's former wife had been embezzling from the organization. So if you, in the middle of an investigation, try to figure out who may have been working with her on that, what lunatic is going to sign a CFO to anybody, 990 to anything? Nobody but a lunatic would sign that because of the potential legal liability that you ultimately may face and public shaming that you may face for trying to hide the fact that this person who had been given, it would seem, because she had a relationship with David Keene at one point, would given authority to sign checks and open accounts and basically take money that had come into the organization to pay off her Costco bill and her American Express, and nobody decided to do anything about it other than just refer it to the Eastern District of Virginia. I mean,
Charles, these steaks and family-sized Cheerios aren't going to pay for themselves.
Exactly. So here you get point blank denied. If we go back in, not to this year, but to the next year, we see that they're denied again.
Yeah.
Right? But if
back one, right?
Yeah. If you could open up the 2010 slurry of documents.
Yep.
And here, just remember Yeah. Remember what we've got here? We've got two organizations, purported organizations. We've got the American Conservative Union on the one hand, and then we've got the American Conservative Union Foundation on the other hand. We're going to learn that the American Conservative Union Foundation is a fiction. It's not an organization. It delegates management to this American Conservative Union. There are periods where it has no employees. It's paying rent. Why would you pay rent for having no employees? And the numbers are, I think, are completely invented. They're not actually stress tested by anybody who's truly independent, whether a trustee, director, or independent auditor, as is required by a raft of laws. So in this, I don't know if you can get to the 2010 listing of documents
Yeah,
for
we're
the
here.
second denial. Okay, do you see their consent order or attachment or something?
Yes.
Okay, let's start with the attachment. Now the attachment is kind of the beginning of it. This attachment is filed in various states in various ways. The truly damaging information is hidden in many states. Now, what does this one say?
It says American Conservative Union Attachment 3,
That's the
and the
statement of.
purpose.
And
What is it?
is it just one page or does it keep going?
It's 4 pages.
Okay. This is the motherhood and apple pie page where you say, we stand for sunlight, or if darkness is your preference, we stand for darkness. Wonderful. Then let's look at this. What does this say, Jason?
It says on May 23rd, 1998, the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania's Department of Bureau of Charitable Organization issued a cease and desist order against the American Conservative Union, Inc., for failing to respond to the Bureau's repeated requests for information and for soliciting contributions in Pennsylvania without a current license.
Now, remember, this attachment is filed a year after the previous application, which said there were no such items. So they wait a year and they file this. And this is when Bill Clinton was still president. This was going on. I don't know who the governor was and the attorney general was in Pennsylvania in 1998, but this is just when the Clinton Foundation was deciding that they didn't have to obey the law either, that they didn't have to file either in Washington, D.C., where I think they were conducting operations for tax exemption, or they didn't have to file a 990 for the period October 23, 1997 to December 31st, 1997, when they definitely were in operation. So here's a year ago, they say to North Carolina, no problems. And people can, we don't have to read every paragraph, but there are 5 instances cited here that are defects that are hidden in similar filings made by the American Conservative Union around the country. So these are people who, they seem in some ways that people then associated with this. And I would say anybody who then was a director and today is a director should be removed from the organization with prejudice, because you can't be going to North Carolina, an important state, as we'll see in a few minutes, and be soliciting there, either using a suspect fundraiser under such suspicious terms, or actually using people in the organization to raise money from North Carolina donors when you're not licensed and when you've been denied, when you've been lying, and then go around at the American Conservative Union and castigate Obama, as happened in this time frame, 2009 through 16, castigate Obama and the Democrats and the progressives for being a bunch of liars who don't respect law and order. It kind of calls into, it just guts the integrity of your operation to behave in this fashion, while also then criticizing others for doing exactly what you're doing. And I think this helps explain, to me anyway, the single-digit approval rating that is associated with people in Congress, in the Senate, and in our expensive monkey business of government, in particular Washington, D.C., because people see this and they see this horrible behavior by supposed conservatives. And when people are trying to decide if you're truly a conservative or not, there's a phrase that's come into being, which is called the movement conservative. That means you're a real conservative. These are bowel movement conservatives. They're shitting all over conservative principles that were enshrined by people who did care about conservative principles. The Buckleys, to be two cases, Jim and Bill, and many others. So this is a record that it doesn't qualify to be Swiss cheese because it's all whole. There's no cheese. I mean, the stuff that they're supposed to lay out and defend in these documents, it's impossible for them to defend. And as I say, the ruse by which they attempt to get around the strict rules on only soliciting lawfully is to have the American Conservative Union go out and hire fundraisers and have the American Conservative Union, which is a C4 and in theory can engage in political activity, limited political activity, supervise the mailings of these different fundraising people, but have some of that fundraising go into the American Conservative Union Foundation, which is supposed to be 170B 18A6 public charity that cannot be used for political activity. And so when we start looking at this record, now that I've gotten close enough to it to begin to, I think, tease out some of the better questions, the real question is just how independent is this American Conservative Union Foundation from the American Conservative Union? Is the American Conservative Union controlling every aspect, every important decision? If there's a conflict of interest between the two, whose interests are defended? Is the American Conservative Union Foundation's theoretical status as a, quote, charitable organization being used as the excuse to have this rampant, incessant telemarketing and mail order direct mail solicitation go on in the guise of charity, when in fact, if you really subject this American Conservative Union and its foundation to some tough scrutiny, you discover that neither entity is lawfully organized, operated, audited, or accounted for. And we're only now on 1 year here. I mean, we could go way back, we can go way forward. If we go and switch gears a little bit, Jason, and now look into ProPublica at the American Conservative Union Foundation 2009-990, we're going to see some interesting things.
American Conservative Union Foundation. Here
2009-990. Now, I've already downloaded it, so I don't think ProPublica will be interested in disappearing this 990 from 2009, but the 2009-990 contains a Schedule B. Towards the end.
I think we already have this perhaps loaded into. You emailed this to me, right?
Maybe I did. Yeah, I did actually.
Okay.
So if we go into the Schedule B section, let's see how many Schedule B names, that is to say donors who are listed. And here they get the ProPublica has laid its hands on information which normally is confidential. The specific names of the donors and the specific names, and the amounts of the donors. And we're going to go through.
This is it, right?
Yeah, I think it is. You'll have to scroll down to about the Schedule B.
Schedule B coming up.
Good. And folks at home can do this too. And this is an exercise that it was possible to do in 2001. The IRS had the ability to do this, and afterwards, cross-checking much bigger frauds, such as the Clinton Foundation and other entities that submit information that is just fiction and hides the degree to which monies may have been diverted to finance personal living and political expenditures illegally. All right, here's Schedule
living, Charles.
High living, yeah, exactly. Buying champagne for your 8-year-old.
Right. Well, this says it's a 501c3.
Yeah, we're now on the foundation. We switched gears, and I've we're now looking. I'm trying to make the point, as we'll see in a second, that though neither the American Conservative Union or the American Conservative Union Foundation were registered to solicit in North Carolina, we're soon going to see that substantial sums were raised in North Carolina. Now, they may try to say, well, these weren't solicited. The donor came forward without being asked and said, we love you so much, we want to give you this money. We're going to be able to check that in the fullness of time. But if you go down this page, Jason, to the next page, it starts giving you the actual identities and amounts. There you go.
Ah, yes.
Now, I can't see, the type is awfully small. I can't, if we...
Ann Schutz Foundation, 10
That's
grand.
in Colorado. There's an exercise to say, did that money, Dan should send it to the foundation, or did he send it to the American Conservative Union? That's something that we're going to be able to check. Do you see one there from North Carolina?
Well, this is Denver. We've got the Armstrong Foundation from Mississippi, I guess, MS. Bradley Foundation from Wisconsin.
Mississippi has strict fundraising rules, and I think there's a consent order having to do with improper fundraising and a fine in Mississippi. But here they're raising money from the Armstrong.
Okay, Bradley, Wisconsin.
The Bradley Foundation, I think, is, from memory, the president of the Bradley Foundation was on the board of the American Conservative Union and has himself a foundation that made a contribution. I think his name is William Pope. And that foundation that sent money here into the American Conservative Union Foundation is based in North Carolina. So you keep on going down.
You got Bradley Foundation, Wisconsin. Castle Rock Foundation, Colorado. Dodge Jones Foundation, Texas. Mr. Daniel Hallman, South Carolina.
So South Carolina, by the way, has very strict solicitation rules as well.
Yeah. Cribble Foundation, 7 grand from Colorado. John William Pope Foundation, North Carolina, $5,000.
All right, so stop for a second there. How many times have you said the word foundation?
Yeah, they're all foundations. That's weird.
Well, it's not only is it weird, in a number of the locations where they register, they're asked, are you going to take money from foundations? And they say no.
So here they changed their mind.
So if we go, do you see another North Carolina one there? And there's something, the Lucy Booth Institute, or so the Lucy something Institute. You're going to see in a second.
Lucy Goosey Institute?
I think it's probably
here's Captive Air from North Carolina, $10,000.
Right. I think one of the directors owns or is the CEO of Captive Air. And so in each instance that somebody connected to the foundation is donating to the foundation, there should be more explicit explanation of those links. And in many states, you're required to disclose all that stuff.
Right. Well, we've got Chevron.
And also, as you're looking through there, Jason, also looking for that Booth Institute or whatever. When a donor makes a small donation to a foundation but collects a huge check back from the foundation for fundraising services, that's something that you would want to explain, because you would appear to be generating a substantial private gain. I mean, you can use any fundraiser you want to do this mail order fundraising or telemarketing. Might it have been the case that you selected one, you said, look, you can have this contract, but you got to make a donation to our charity. And is it really a donation if it's coming out of fees that you're paying the fundraising person? So these are questions that, if this were the Trump Foundation, we would have spent 4 years on this while Donald Trump was in the White House. But for some reason, the left hasn't decided to take a close look at here. And frankly, there are people on the right. I'm thinking maybe somebody like Tucker Carlson, and Peter Schweitzer is pretty fair-minded. He's gone after Republicans, Elaine Chao and others, as well as Democrats, Kamala Harris, Obama, and others, and the Clintons. If you're going to be involved with something called the Government Accountability Institute, which Schweitzer is, this is a project that you really should dive into. So I want to find, Jason, there's the Booth Institute there as you keep going down. I just can't see the names, otherwise I would say where they are, because you've got, my screen only shows the numbers.
We got to get you a much bigger phone. Edison Electric Institute.
Right.
That's DC. Coke, DC.
Now, stop
Kohler,
there.
Toilet
You're
Company.
supposed to identify what you mean. Is that happens to be the at the time the Washington D.C. office of a portion of Coke, but is it David Koch? Is it Charles Koch? Is it the foundation? Is it the company? You're supposed to do more than just say Coke.
Mm-hmm.
And
do that. And that's $25,000. Kohler Corporation, $5,000. That's less than the price of that toilet they display on Fifth Avenue, Charles. Shell, they could have donated a toilet for $14,000. Shell Oil, $10,000 from Texas. Tejon Corporation, Texas, $5,000. The NRA for $100,000 from Virginia.
Stop there. Stop there. It's unclear whether the NRA has many buckets. And just to give a shout out to Katya Blanova, she asked me a bunch of questions about the NRA. There's a piece that's just out last night in Sputnik where I begin the process of talking about what I found in the NRA, which is a bigger mess by far than this. The question is, which pocket of the NRA did this money come from? Did it come from the main national organization? Did it come from a chapter? Did it come from something called the NRA Foundation? And a large number of folks on the American Conservative Union and American Board for Certain Conservative Union Foundation Board are NRA board members. And one is an NRA senior employee. So
here's the article in Sputnik right here, Charles.
Thank you, Jason. People will enjoy reading it and maybe circulating it. And just parenthetical here, I feel passionately that conservatism, political conservatism, economic conservatism, I should say, is a thing to prize. I also feel that it's very important that we hold on to the rights which are enshrined or protected in our Constitution. We should not lightly give up Second Amendment rights or any of those rights. And that doesn't mean that I want to walk around New York City with a handgun. But just because I don't want to do that, just because 80% of people live in cities, doesn't mean that the know-it-all elites, most of them have concealed carry permits or bodyguards or both. Right. We shouldn't take criticism, as Hillary was out yesterday saying, Republicans worship guns. I don't know if she said not God, but she said Republicans worship guns. I don't think that's the point at all, as I explained in the article. It's not that we worship
but
guns.
Charles, to your point, she's a person who hasn't gone anywhere unprotected by a gun since 98?
98? Are you kidding me?
92.
Back as 81.
Right, Arkansas. She's always protected by guns. She's not at the type of danger that the average citizen is. Nobody can approach her.
Well, especially given the policies that are now being promulgated, that were promulgated under Obama, and then now under the resident, not the president, the resident, of defunding the police and eliminating bail and making this country a sanctuary country. So I'm not against. And it's quite the opposite. I'm in favor of protecting all of the rights that are in our American Constitution that were laid out in the Bill of Rights, and any that may be added. What I'm against is slipshod charities, bowel movement conservative charities that operate under the name of something that sounds good, the National Rifle Association or or frankly the American Conservative Union, but in fact are running it, corrupting them to the core, running them to create substantial private gains in terms of elevating their political stature so they can make money off their consulting businesses, or elevating their stature so they can sell books or sell other items to their loyal followers, elevating their stature so that they can gain high-level meetings that they might otherwise not be able to get with people who can do business with them or employ them in their consulting or other capacities. That's not charity. You want to do that? Set up a consulting company as an LLC or an LLP in Nevada, and you're under no obligation when you're trying to create these business opportunities to disclose. You're under few obligations to disclose much. If you, on the other hand, start representing foreign principles inside the United States before you got to register under FARA. If you're getting involved in political stuff, you've got to be aware of the Federal Election Commission responsibilities. But when you blur the lines, as these people have, and it's worse than blurring them, when you flush your principles down the toilet, you're not doing anything at all to help the conservative movement. In fact, you're hurting it. So, back on where we were, Jason, where were we exactly?
Well, just real quick, Charles, I want to share with you some feedback from our viewers. First of all, a lot of people are very positive on Peter Schweitzer reading his books. Patricia's afraid to read your article on Sputnik because it's a Russian website. I can't speak to that fear.
Right.
And then...
let me address that. First of all, yes, the website is in fact owned by an entity that is, I think, controlled by the Russian government. The person, Katrina Blanova, with whom I have done about 150 articles like this, sends me questions, I attempt to answer them, and then she crafts the articles. And you can go and read them. I think they've been eminently fair. I've never been spiked once.
She's super polite, professional.
She's an independent contractor, I think, or she was anyway, an independent contractor. She's a historian by training. She's very fair-minded. She covers a lot of topics. And I like the way in which she deals with the questions she poses and the answers she deals with my answers. And I think for me, it's been a very educational experience. Looking back on it, I wonder how I found the time to do all of it. But there's no reason to be scared, I think, of looking at Sputnik. And indeed, it's interesting to contrast the work that's going on at Sputnik with the work that's going on, let's say, at CNN, if there is any work.
Well, I would argue you have more to worry about going to CNN.com or Facebook or any of these other things. So I'm not trying to tell anybody what to do, but I personally don't have any fear of viewing the Sputnik website or interacting with Katya Blanova. She's been great. And then one other thing, Bill is asking if you're worried about blowback, Charles. I'm not sure what Bill means by that, but I don't think...
No, I mean, first of all, as mighty as the American Conservative Union may be, I think General Electric was a little bit bigger and more powerful. And that's what I started with. So we'll see what happens. You know, I'm dealing with the public record here, and I am under no obligation. I don't work for the American Conservative Union or American Conservative Union Foundation. Indeed, the IRS, if you go back and you read about the ideas, how the IRS and Congress expected charities to be policed, they expected people like you and me, Jason, to, when we see anomalies and when we see a Department of Justice and an IRS unwilling to police politically connected dynastic organizations, we speak out to the public. Because after all, the entire government, you may not believe this, but they work for us. They're servants of the public. They're not enrichment consulting firms, personal enrichment consulting firms, though recent history might suggest otherwise. No,
how do you
Jason,
like the stock quote for GE, Charles? Sorry to be ADD, but I can't help it.
Where is it now? 15?
1313. It's you can't see it on your. It's 33.
Anyway, there you go. You know, I had my people organize that. Just get I make
Okay.
decisions on certain stocks, even though you could make an argument you might make money. You could do that. You can make that argument betting on a sports game or going to the track. I just GE is a stock I just have no interest in owning and don't have the time or energy to try shorting it.
I
Call it.
do have one more unrelated question for you because this occurred to me. There was another bump supposedly going to happen with the stonk thing with GameStop and AMC. You know, you and I have walked around New York City asking a million times, how the hell could this company still be open? Their stock surged with that whole short sale thing. So we'll talk about that another time. But I find
All right.
that interesting, and I think somebody was doing something with that. But where would you like to go on
I'd
this?
like to go back to the Schedule B, and I'd like to find that Booth Institute entry.
I think that's this.
I can't see the names, so
Booth Institute. Let's see if we can
it's like
find that.
it's like Lucy Booth, or you're almost to it, Jason. If you just keep on going down the page, you get to it. You're almost through the Schedule G.
Okay. So we got James Clark. We got Robert Luddy, North Carolina, $10,000.
And on the board of the American Conservative Union. So
Uh-huh.
you would have thought that if he's taking his director's responsibilities seriously, he would have checked to see whether the thing had been registered in North Carolina. And if it hadn't been, he would have said, now, wait a minute, boys. This North Carolina is then, back in 2009, a Republican state. We got Obama going after, possibly, who knows if Lois Lerner and others were going after the American Conservative Union. If they weren't doing it. They were certainly doing it half-heartedly, because there's gold in them Narrow Hills here.
We got the
But
Broesch Family Foundation, 20 grand from Texas. How's the
yeah,
Attorney General in Texas?
yeah,
Leadership Institute in Virginia, 7,000. Campaign for Liberty, Virginia, 12,000. Alliance Defense Fund, 6,000 from Arizona. Intercollegiate Studies Institute, 55 grand from the great state of Delaware. $12,000 from the American Future Fund in Iowa. Another 45,000 from the NRA in Fairfax, Virginia. Microsoft in Washington, D.C. with 15,000. Pajamas Media, El Segundo, California. Don't leave your wallet there, Charles. $15,000.
yeah. I
Then you
think you're
got
getting to Lucy.
Citizens United, $10,000, D.C. HSP Direct, isn't that the mail order company? Why are they giving money to
Right.
them?
Well, that's the question. That's a very good question. And there, I think beneath it, you have what?
Lucy Burns Institute, Madison,
Lucy
Wisconsin,
Burns Institute. Lucy Burns.
6,500.
Right. Now, did they give the EIN for that?
Uh, I don't think so.
Let's pause this exercise and let's go back into ProPublica and look at Lucy Burns and see if that institute declares a $6,500 grant to the American Conservative Union in
So,
2009.
sorry, the person or the institute? Which are we looking for?
The institute, whatever the name of that thing is, the Lucy Burns or Booth or whatever it's called, institute. If you go back into the ProPublica 990 Explorer and punch that
Yeah,
name in,
I have it here.
retrieve
Lucy
the 2000,
Burns.
right?
She just stings a little bit.
Well,
Lucy Burns Institute.
yeah.
Okay.
And we go into the 2009 filing, and we're going to go in the beginning, 2009. While you're trying to find it, I think the great Ortel believes that you're going to see a very controversial name in this 990. Somebody called Eric Erickson.
I like that name. It's pretty dumb.
Yeah.
All right, let's just get this.
Well, Eric, son of Eric.
Right, it's easy to remember. They can just call him Eric Jr. That's going into documents here. Okay, so unfortunately, I've smashed a TV that I was traveling with, so I have to do this a little bit differently. Constantly moving in and out of places, things can get smashed.
Wow. Sorry to hear that.
Well, TVs are
So
cheap these days.
we're going to focus here. This is the institute which in 2009 supposedly gave 6,500 to the American Conservative Union Foundation. And we're going to see, once Jason can open this up, we're going to see just how many grants this entity made in 2009. And hint, not many.
All right.
Yeah. So the first page is not going to give grant details, but as you scroll through it, you're going to get this program. This is slow down a little bit. You're going to get to the governance, and you're going to see 4 directors.
I might have passed it.
No, you're just getting up to it, right there.
Oh,
you got 4 directors. Is the last one, or 4 officers? Is the last one Eric Erickson by chance?
yeah.
Okay. Now, Eric Erickson has made very negative comments about the American Conservative Union, and I think he's controversial. He's made a lot of very controversial comments. He's based in Georgia. He's in media. He's got a radio show. He does not like the American Conservative Union. Now, maybe he's explained somewhere that I haven't seen why, but he said that he would not favor any candidate who was endorsed by the American Conservative Union. And it could be because of what we're going to talk about in a second. If you go down to the page where it lays out the expenses, Jason, this is organization, and the next page might be more organization stuff, no independent contractors. Now you got revenue there, right? And then is that revenue?
Yeah, income. Investment income, $230. They're killing it.
Next page.
What the hell did they invest in?
Okay, slow down. Go to the left of this page and look at the line grants to domestic organizations. It's on the left of the page. I cannot see the type in my screen. I don't know.
Well, there's nothing listed for any of these grants. Grants and other assistance to governments and organizations in the U.S. Nothing.
Right. So somebody doing an audit of the American Conservative Union Foundation with half a brain definitely would. He doesn't have half a brain. Somebody who is, let's say, drummed out of BKD for being too sloppy for BKD, even that guy or woman would ask the American Conservative Union Foundation management for a list of their major donors, the Schedule B donors. And then they would send, typically if it were a real audit, they would send letters out, confirmation letters out to each donor saying, we want to confirm that you did in fact make a gift of this amount. We want to know on what date and by what means did you send it to the organization. That's how you cross-check whether people are stealing from an organization. So here, this entity, now maybe somebody's stealing from the Burns Institute, I don't know. But this entity gave no grants, so it clearly didn't give a grant to the American Conservative Union Foundation of $6,500. Let's do the same exercise for the Intercollegiate Studies Institute, which was a $55,000 donor, in theory, in 2009. Now, it's a little bit tougher. We're not going to do it for both 990s, but they, I think, have a March 31, 2009 year end. So let's just
what's it called?
Studies Institute. Studies plural.
Right.
And just the exercise we did just now, Jason, getting the March 31, 2010 990 and looking at in the expense page the amount they gave in grants, we will find something interesting.
Right. Okay, so we want 2010, you said?
Well, it's this one I think doesn't have a calendar year end. From memory, is it March 31? It's the year end.
I don't remember.
It's on. It says there.
Where's
right
that?
To the left of what you're showing me now? On the top where it says, you see the year is...
Financial year ending 2016. Well, let's just take a look. 2000...
Look at 2010.
Okay. 990.
Remember, this is ISI supposedly gives the American Conservative Union Foundation, not Union, $55,000 in this year. Now, this is, what does that say at the top?
2009.
What's the name of it? Oh, Intercollegiate Studies Institute. Okay, and you see the dates there at the top? Does it say?
It's tough to read.
It's to the left of what you're showing.
They typed it super small here.
Yeah, you see that it's, if you can move it to the left a little bit, if that's possible.
I can't with the way I have it here.
All right. Well, let's just go to the grants line in expenses as we did before. And let's see how many grants the Intercollegiate Studies Institute made in 2009.
So this is independent contractors.
Well, who are the independent contractors, by the way? Is it HSP Direct? A little bit further down, I think. Further down, the other way. Just below this. Yep, right there.
Looks like Jeff Can and LT Lieutenant General Joseph Bunting.
Those are people. No. To the left of the independent contractors, the very bottom of this page. No, you've gone too far. Go back.
Nothing.
Bottom section here. There's two amounts shown.
Oh yeah.
I can't see who's getting it.
Yeah, let me see here. It doesn't. Well, yeah. Those two amounts are for our buddy Jeff. It's funny. See, when I said let me save time by not downloading this thing, it winds up not saving time. Let me download it so we can view it in the way that you want to see it.
Okay. Well,
here we go.
Yeah, and just so people understand, I've already contacted the Intercollegiate Studies Institute to say, listen, there's a problem here, and I want to understand what's going on here. Now, the Intercollegiate Studies Institute is an enterprise that sends out a lot of junk mail, too. And I haven't gotten to studying yet how much money that the junk mailers are making off these appeals for the Intercollegiate Studies Institute. But clearly, if it's not making grants to anybody, it certainly didn't make a $55,000 grant to the American Conservative Union Foundation.
Right.
So have you got it up now?
Yes, we can view this much more easily now. So, okay. So we want to see...
Well, yeah, the organization section, the end of the organization section at the bottom of it has independent contractors listed. Those typically are the mail order people or consultants. Sometimes it's lawyers and accountants if there's a lot of work in a given period for lawyers and accountants. Now that's the beginning of the organization section. Next page at the bottom.
Okay, here we go.
Yeah. Who are the people? They're the amounts I see, but to the left of the amounts are their names.
It's Jeff Kane and General Josiah Bunting.
Yeah, okay, so we don't know why they're independent contractors. We'll find
a lot of money. Over $100,000 for each of them.
Right. So then on the next page, you've got revenue. And on the page after that, you've got expenses. Now, at the top of this page, to the left, you'll have grants.
Grants and other assistance to governments and organizations in the U.S.
Yeah, and what do they show?
Nothing.
0. Right? Now let's go to Schedule G. Schedule G is an interesting schedule for those of us who like detail, that where a charity has to explain its fundraising activities. And it can be very interesting, particularly in the case of the American Conservative Union, and Foundation to cross-check what's in the expense lines and independent contractor lines with what's in Schedule G. And I can't tell whether you're on Schedule G yet. That's, I think, Schedule. What is it?
That was
you want.
O.
Is there a G?
Well, there was a 3, which threw me off. I don't know
There's
where
different
3 fits in with G.
It's at upper left. Here we go. Grants and other. To the left of this,
That's
what
I.
schedule is? All right, so you want G. That's beforehand.
We should have H here. Whoops. Now that's D.
Okay, so maybe they haven't filled out Schedule G properly in 2009. Schedule G is a schedule that came into use in 2008. And here, for people who are thinking that they're going to monkey around with these forms, you have to understand that there are quite a few forms that you have to fill out. There are schedules, and there are also special forms. When you change your accounting, for example, from cash to accrual or the other way, you've got to explain that in great detail. And part of the issue here for the American Conservative Union, the American Conservative Union Foundation, is not what's in. It's not the mistakes and omissions that they made in the schedules they provided. It's the schedules they failed to send in, which are also a problem. And if you provide an incomplete return, you haven't filed. Now I'm getting poor connection to my.
Oh, really? Working totally fine. Should be okay.
So, as we're,
I went to great lengths, Charles, to avoid poor connection.
Yeah, well, maybe it's just a fake thing. So I hear you perfectly. So if we can go back into the North Carolina charity search thing, I want to. We had teased something in the last broadcast that I want to dwell on a little bit here.
So, do we want a new search in there, or something that we've already brought up?
No, new search.
Okay. And searching for?
Forthright strategy.
Got it here. Slightly less than forthright strategy.
Right, exactly. Now, forthright strategy, the majority owner of it, in theory, is a person named Kimberly Bellissimo. And she goes on the board of the American Conservative Union, and I think the foundation in either 14 or 15. If at the bottom of this, you'll see contracts. We're going to pull up contracts.
Yeah.
All right. Do you see there's a contract? They give you dates as well. I can't see any of that on my screen, but there's one for the American Conservative Union. We're going to do that in a second. But if you pick the one right before the one for the American Conservative Union, I think it's signed in like 15 or 14. There's one signed in 14, I believe. It's not going to be for the...
Yeah, it's 60 plus.
Yeah, 60 plus. That's a perfect one to pick up. So we hit that one. 60 plus is an organization that Jerry Corsi has written about, where the CEO believes that he was illegally pushed out of the charity so that the new management could employ people married to the new management and solicitation agents that might not necessarily be charging at arm's length, might be overcharging the charity. So if we go down this one here, this is an arrangement between 60 plus, and let's look at the signature page, the very bottom. The date and the signature. Who's it signed by?
Amy Noon Frederick or something.
And on the left.
And Matthew on the left. Timothy Webster.
Timothy Webster. Okay. If we go to one beforehand, if we go into a different contract, date-wise immediately before that one, and do the same thing. Let's look at the signature page.
Sure.
All right.
Oh. Now, wait a minute. It's got Project Veritas here.
Yeah, we'll get to that. That's another one, but I don't want to do that one at the moment. Let's do the one right before 60 plus.
I got to go back one more, I think.
Yeah, we will be getting into Project Veritas. It's just I haven't done as much work on that yet as I want to, and will do.
Now, wait a minute. I'm having a tough time getting
You've
back
got
to
it.
where
You
we
got
were here.
Yeah, you're right where we used to be. This is if you find 60 plus and click on the link for the thing right before 60 plus.
That's what I got lost. Okay, here's 60 plus association. The thing right before it is Hero Box.
Yeah, Hero Box. That's an interesting one. Hero Box is one that is deeply suspicious, where supposedly a hero is identified and contributors are identified, and a hero has a wish list for a box of goods that they want, and the non-cash items are sent to the hero, and there's a great potential for fraud. And articles have been written about the potential defects in the operation, organization, fundraising for Hero Box. But let's see who has signed the Hero Box contract.
So is it the... Okay, there we go. Contract.
And notice these contracts are sort of formulaic documents. To the left, Jason, that's the client. But to the left is
Michael Centani.
Michael Centani. Now, Michael Centani was the chief operating officer of what was called at the time Base Connect. And when in October of 2000, what's the date of this one, by the way?
Let me go back up to the top here. It's funny that they're not dating it on the signature page, right?
Right.
Here at the top it says 9/28/2012.
All right. So in October of 2014, folks, and I'm not sure whether it was the FBI or the U.S. Attorney or both, became alerted to or suspicious of Michael Centani. And I think you have a link. People can Google Michael Centani. There are quite a few stories about how he was rounded up in October 2014 and put in jail at the end of October 2014 and pled guilty to possessing child pornography on his computers, and then was sent to prison for 46 months. This is the chief operating officer of your fundraising solicitation agent, who's using the mail, working with a charity, multiple charities, many of them deeply suspicious, to send mail across state lines soliciting cash, and maybe or not keeping such good control over the cash, the message, the laws, etc. Your chief operating officer goes to jail for child pornography issues, and the majority owner says, okay, what we're going to do, we better change the name of our operation from Base Connect to Forthright Strategies, because obviously we're the remaining forthright people, not Mr. Centani. Now, there are bad apples, and fraudsters are very good, and worse, are very good at hiding their criminal activity. They realize that if they expose their criminal activity to the light of day, they go to prison, so they don't want to do that. And it's possible that Kimberly Bellissimo did not have any inkling that this person was in possession of child pornography on computers and otherwise. But he was the chief operating officer of this fundraising operation, this fundraising council. And you would have thought that somebody at the American Conservative Union, if you're really going to uphold the high principles of conservatism, law, respect for law and order, the last thing you would want to do is employ a, quote, tainted firm to do a lot of work for you as raising money for the American Conservative Union and maybe for the American Conservative Union Foundation. And furthermore, the last thing you might want to do is put this executive who missed it, let's to put it charitably on Centani, to put her on the board, both of the American Conservative Union, then the American Conservative Union Foundation, and then make her vice chairman of the board of the public charity. And then most recently give her an award at CPAC.
Well, let me ask you this, Charles. If you were in a corporation that was dealing with a company that had this kind of thing happen, even if they ejected the guy, aren't there a lot of companies that would say, hey, look, so-and-so, we've done business with you for X long, we really like you, but we can't be anywhere near this, we're firing you and going with somebody else just because this guy was associated with you. People would.
Right. Well, yeah, again, sending solicitations in bulk, asking for money across state lines using the mail, you want to be very careful. If you don't want to, as I think these folks have done, you don't want to say that we, the organization, retain responsibility for all of this activity, and the fundraising agent never held custody and control. That's if you run a tight ship. If you run a ship where the audit sucks, where there are no controls, where the bookkeeper's stealing money from you, maybe you would want to have the fundraising agent keep charge of the money, and maybe you'd want to have all sorts of tight controls. But the last thing you'd want to do, given the other problems the American Conservative Union and Foundation have had, and there are many of them, and we're just getting into them, the last thing I would have thought you wanted to do was hire forthright strategies for anything having to do with a public charity / 501c4, particularly if you're Matt Schlapp, who is a relatively young person with a high profile now, engaged through Cove Strategies and various high-level consulting operations. The last thing you'd want to do is get very close to this. Now, that brings us to the fundraising agreement that was signed on May 18th, 2016 between the American Conservative Union and Forthright Strategies. And that's something that you can see, Jason, if you go back into the list of contracts there. I will be taking people through this in writing because it's not, I don't think, best done in this fashion. But when we look through the contract, you'll see in the summary, Jason, it says each client. I think it's the last one might be Forthright, might be American Conservative Union, or the second to the last one as you go down the page. You can see that these contracts all charge roughly similar amounts. If you're dealing with mailing thousands, per the 1,000 mailings, most of them charge a similar amount of money for the mailing. They also charge for list management and other services. There are many ways in which Forthright Strategies and its legion of affiliated companies can dip into the pockets of their clients for fees. And the amounts that we're talking about here are not small. These are large amounts of money. So if we start at the date, I don't know if the date is there right in the beginning, or we could figure out the date this is signed. I think it's signed May 18th, 2016. Maybe you have to go to the end of the document, Jason.
Well, it's funny. It's not consistent with the other one. It doesn't have the date at the top, and it's not dated on the signature page. I think anytime you have a signature page without a date, isn't that kind of questionable?
It is. It is. I think it is dated May 18th, 2016. I remember that because that's right around the
10:33, 30 seconds.
5/3/2018. All right. So what is it?
It's May 3rd, 2018 at 10:33 and 30 seconds. So that's very precise.
That's what that is. That's not the date of the contract. I think that is this the
filed,
contract?
You're right.
Yeah. Well,
it's the contract between Forthright Strategies and American Conservative Union I don't really see a date on here other than that, Charles.
We'll keep on going. I think you'll see it in a second. It's right. I think it's right there in the middle. It talks about the date. It's,
Not seeing it.
all right. Well, what this document does, as you look, maybe you'll find it as I'm talking. What it does is it basically says that the American Conservative Union is going to work with Forthright Strategy for a long period of time. It's a 20-year deal.
Yeah, sorry. This is talking about December 31st, 2036.
Right. So it's a 20-plus year deal, unless it's terminated early. But you'll see that the termination provisions are rough. If Forthright is terminated and is owed money, they have the right, under this contract, the way I read it, to continue to solicit until their bills are repaid. Now, what Forthright does, if you Google them, there's some. We're going to introduce. I hope I've talked to one of the domain experts on this on junk mail. Forthright and firms like Forthright have made a business of clogging up your mailbox with multiple appeals for things that sound like you might be interested in. They have a conservative box and they have a progressive box, and this Forthright targets conservatives. Others will target progressives and liberals, and you just start getting a barrage of this junk mail. And they're able to take an upstart person, an attractive person, perhaps like James O'Keefe, very young, and say, listen, you're a nice young person. You want to create this Project Veritas. We've got mailing lists. We'll lend you money for postage. Postage is expensive. You sign up with us. You got to sign up with us for a long length of time, because in the beginning, we Forthright are going to lose money, but over time, you're going to make money right away, because you're not going to owe us anything until we start collecting receipts sufficient to repay your debt to us. And we'll draft it so it looks like it's not a hard debt to you. You don't have a hard debt to us, but in the fine print, they craft it such that you do actually, you're on the hook one way or another. And so this is a contract, the way I read it, that is signed by Dan Schneider, the new executive director. It's signed by Kimberly. It's signed by, I think, one of Kimberly Bellissimo's partners. She remembers the majority owner. She's on the board of the American Conservative Union, so she has a big conflict. And in addition, this contract is structured so that not only is Forthright Strategies making money, but as the general contractor, but they can cause the American Conservative Union to be obligated to pay for lists management services and other services that might be provided by other companies that are either subsidiaries of Forthright or owned by Bellissimo and other shareholders of Forthright. So I bring all this up to say, I hope in just this short time we've had together today, people begin to see, this is a very technical accounting term, how fucked up the controls are and non-existent on these various entities. We have multiple similar sounding names. We have contracts that haven't been reviewed by independent directors. We have financial statements that haven't been audited by independent auditors. We have tax forms that are incomplete, that are false. And then when you really get into the minutia, as I am in the process of doing now, you've got restatements that aren't done properly. You've got audits that are not audits. You have a switch in accounting policy that's not appropriate. And in essence, what you're doing here with all of this work, what's the one name that I haven't been talking about yet, which is the heart of this operation? That's CPAC, the thing you got kicked out of.
Right.
The Conservative Political Action Conference is the main activity in substance of this suite of supposed 501c4 and 3 organizations. CPAC is the end-all and be-all, in theory, the Woodstock for conservatives. If you're a politician and you're conservative and you want the Republican nomination, you got to show up at CPAC. You got to, suck it up. You got to curry favor. If you can send them money, you've got to send them money. You fight for the opportunity, as Matt Gaetz got, to address CPAC in the prime speaking moment, because a lot of eyes are on you. If you're also running media entities or political consulting operations or communications firms, you want to go to CPAC because you can pass your card. You want to exhibit at CPAC because you can mine for prospects. You can stand next to important conservatives. You could probably find leads that'll pay for your trip in the end if you get these kind of 20-year deals that Kim
Yeah.
Bellissimo got out of the American Conservative Union. The amounts that we're talking about here for Bellissimo's firm are, as I see it, certainly $1 million a year. And in the contract, what it appears to me, and I'll have this written up, lawyers should look at this. It appears as if the Bellissimo has rights if the firm is terminated, she has rights to keep the American Conservative Union on the hook for repayment of past due amounts. But those rights are waived through the operation of this contract for the American Conservative Union so long as Matt Schlapp remains the chairman of the American Conservative Union. That is the very definition of an illegal private benefit in my mind. And I'm not a lawyer, but this is cementing his control. You hire a friend, you give them an off-market contract, which I think this is. A 20-year deal is absurd for the nation's eminent conservative organization. I mean, just think about Crowdsource the Truth. You're not a charity, but you have 119,000 subscribers. I mean, you've only been in business for 4 years, or whatever it is, whatever the math is. 5 years now, I guess. And think of the list that you could have, and you're just by yourself. This American Conservative Union has been in existence either since 1964 or 1973 or 1979, or you pick a date, but a long time. A lot of information they have about regular donors. Why would you need to pay somebody like Kimberly Bellissimo, who's emerged as Forthright Strategies out of the husk of a firm that was using a child pornographer as its chief operating officer? Jeez. Why would you pick that firm to pay millions of dollars potentially over a 20-year period? What board meeting discussed, what set of independent directors knew about these terms, knew about the background, and how many different times has the American Conservative Union, or the foundation for that matter, employed these type of fundraisers? Are these fees justified for an organization like the American Conservative Union? And I would say probably not at all, unless the earlier ones who are no longer working for the American Conservative Union found themselves embroiled in a scandal that had to be suppressed. And instead of turning the American Conservative Union and the foundation into the authorities, said, well, if we do that, we'll implicate ourselves. We'll just work our way out of this. We'll hold them up for fees, and we'll eventually get out of this, and we'll get somebody else to do this, because clearly the team around the American Conservative Union and the foundation just can't shoot straight. They can't play straight, even though they're supposedly conservatives. I think that's spelled, the emphasis on the word conservatives. They're not conservatives. They're conservatives.
Really quick, Charles, I want to just point something out for you here on this Forthright Strategies webpage. We've got Kimberly Bellissimo there, the president and CEO. And then, this is a fairly small firm. I would normally expect the top two principals to be like the CEO and the COO or the CFO, or maybe even if these guys have some sort of mail list technology that is unique that makes their company good, maybe this guy would be the CTO. But really the only types of companies where I've seen a chief creative officer are like production companies in Los Angeles, where, if you have like a 3D company, there'll be somebody there who's the chief creative officer that people come work with that company because they want that person's creativity. But what do you need? I guess they're doing mailings, they're designing them, so this guy's the creative. Seems weird to me.
Yeah. Again, there's if you Google drowning in junk mail with Forthright, you will get to a lot of information compiled by this very experienced, I think, domain expert on the evils of junk mail. And there's quite a lot written about it. What Bellissimo appears to have done is she creates up multiple companies. The master company is the Forthright Strategies, but then there's Legacy List Marketing, and there's Century Data, and all these other names that are affiliated or owned by her and her close associates, and they rope you in as a purported charity or nonprofit to this multi-year agreement or lengthy agreement, and then in addition, she causes her subsidiaries to collect fees. And this is all important because a key thing that responsible donors look for, beyond hoping that the charity or insisting that the charity actually exists lawfully and files truthful, complete reports. Beyond that, what you want to look at is what percentage of the charity is wasting money on overhead and worse on fundraising, and what percentage of the money that the revenue that a charity derives in a period, what percentage goes to the actual authorized programs of the charity. Typically, you like to see 85% minimum go to the supposed programs. And then you don't want to do, as the Clinton Foundation does and others do, you don't want to say, well, we have no controls, we've got a butthead accounting firm that's conflicted, and we've got a moron as the chief financial officer who will do whatever we want just because he's happy to get the six-figure salary and live wherever he's living. You really want somebody to look in and say, no, wait a minute, you spent $2 million this year. Really explain to us where that money went. And the heart of the operation here is CPAC itself. Is CPAC an actual organization? Is it a doing business as entity? If so, where? Has it registered? Did it register in Florida where it just was, that having been kicked out of it? Did it register in Maryland where it used to operate? Did it register in D.C. as Conservative Political Action Conference? How did it open bank accounts, if any, for the Conservative Political Action Conference? There's so many areas here where, I'm not an accountant either, where just somebody experienced in business would look at this mess, this festering mess, and say, if this is the opposite of designing controls, this is the opposite of making sure, in the case of this American Conservative Union Foundation, that you're standing broadly in the shoes of government, that you're operating across the political spectrum. This seems to be an incubation exercise for consulting contracts, for off-market vendor relationships involving direct mail and communications and other consulting and maybe legal services. This is a way, I think, of bolstering book sales and media sales of companies that may be owned by directors of the charity and of the C4. And that they would not start in their disclosures and say, the heart of our operation is CPAC. CPAC revenues come in these different ways. Are they charitable? Are they program service revenues? Are they revenues that should be taxed? Or are they revenues that are straight up, are they grants? I don't think any of these people, whether it's the management, the directors, the executives, any outsider has gone through the basic exercise of saying the heart of this thing is CPAC. How much private gain is created by CPAC? Who's monitoring that gain? And why don't the financial statements show anywhere the actual operations of CPAC itself, which only happens, the main one, over the course of 4 or 5 days? It shouldn't be that difficult in 365 days of a year to put together financial statements for a 5-day period. It just shouldn't be that hard. And then for the balance of the year, what are you doing? And why do we need this Conservative Union Foundation and the other one? And how come there are all these different names and different addresses? And why all the restatements? And why all the management changes? I mean, these are all things that, if you were not going to pick on Conservative Union and the foundation, these are all screaming warning signs for fraud. And we've gone through this in the past. There are considerations in financial statement fraud, I think, is a long memo that the accounting professionals have put together periodically. And if you think about what we've been talking about so far, what we'll show you in the future, real accountants would reel in horror at the idea of trying to do an actual audit here. And at minimum, what they'd say is, if for each entity, you've got to have one tax preparer fill out the 990 and the schedules, and you got to have a separate guy or woman, person, do the audit, or Tiger, do the audit for the American Conservative Union. Same exercise for the American Conservative Union Foundation. You wouldn't want to have the tax preparer and the auditor be the same in both cases when you also have the chairman of the entity is the same person. And then you would ask yourself, if you've had a succession of problems, you've had Diana Carr and David Keene problematic. Why is David Keene still on the board of the American Conservative Union Foundation in 2014? Why is he being paid anything after the exercise with his ex-wife? It's a gross, at minimum, lapse in judgment. Put his ex-wife in that position, then to spend as much time as they spent trying to figure it out, and then in the end, not get to the real bottom of what happened and start producing from 2008 onwards financial statements and 990s that are obviously provably incorrect. They don't foot.
Nobody's that
So
stupid,
all of this happened.
realistically speaking. Nobody's that stupid.
Yeah.
I mean, they're obviously doing this intentionally for some purpose that we haven't quite drilled into yet. I just want to share with you, Charles, White Violet tells us that somebody who knows how to create consulting companies took $11 million. We can't identify that company, but all the others are easily found.
Right. And then you start looking. Oh, I see what you mean. Yeah. That there are multiple people. We can go through this perhaps at another time, because I know we're probably, I don't know how much time we spent on this today, but when you go through this year by year, 990 by 990, audit by audit, the inconsistencies, the errors, the incomplete statements of what happened, the misleading statements of what happened, all this stuff is pumping out through the public domain in states like North Carolina and New York and California and many others. They're madly spending money on postage and mailings and things like that. And the basic information as to the nature of the organizations, as to the defects in the organizations, and as to their finances is all wrong. And normally speaking, when the Federal Trade Commission and Department of Justice and the IRS start focusing on these type of mass mail, telemarketing, abusive fundraising exercises, they normally will say each piece of mail that is sent using the mail, if it's fraudulent, if it's sent out while the organization doesn't exist or isn't registered, or worse, is technically bankrupt because its liabilities are greater than its assets, normally the authorities, state, local, and federal, jump all over this stuff. So why wasn't, if Lois Lerner was abusing conservative charities in her tenure as head of the tax-exempt organization, first under Bush and then under Obama until she was forced out, why didn't she see this? I mean, this is far more significant to me in size and in potential relevance to people who want to discipline the way in which money courses through D.C. and other capitals to buy influence with politicians. This is far more serious than some of the minor ones that Lois Lerner's group stopped from getting tax exemption or delayed from getting tax exemption. This is a long-standing pattern and practice of flagrant abuse. And I say this again, not as somebody who's happy to see this. And I have even now, I still have great reverence for the two Buckleys and the early pioneers in the conservative movement, certain wings of the conservative movement. But to see this organization and these purported organizations in this state in 2021, now as we have a militant government, federal government, going against, saying that conservatives are actually a threat, or a bigger threat in the form of domestic terrorists than, let's say, militant jihadists, to think that conservatives would continue to operate this way is just mind-boggling. Have they not learned a single thing from their experiences under Bill Clinton, then under Barack Obama, and now we're going to wait and see what happens under Joe Biden?
Yeah, we're taking a wait and see attitude, Charles, but so far I don't like what I'm seeing. It's not good. But this has been a powerful presentation today, Charles. I do want to let people know, I have to say these things because I know they're very prominent in my mind, but people might not necessarily realize. We've got very low viewership on today's show, in large part because the Jason Goodman channel has received a strike for what I really feel was an unfounded, YouTube just decides whatever the hell they want. So people who are watching us live right now are watching on Crowdsource the Truth. 3. It's the latest backup channel that I've created, and if you are not yet subscribed to it, please do. If you see this video on playback on Jason Goodman at some point in the future, you should still subscribe to Crowdsource the Truth 3 and share this video on your favorite social media channel, or just email it to people if you are one of the many who have been emailing me asking if I'm still alive. The answer is yes, but the live streams have been going out for the past several days on Crowdsource the Truth 3. And of course, if you are a sponsor on subscribestar.com/crowdsourcethetruth or patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth, you're going to be seeing all of these live streams there. I want to thank everybody who sponsors the show and makes it possible for me to continue doing this. Charles, we've been through quite a lot of information here today. Was there anything else you wanted to cover?
No, I think let's hope we can march into April. April Fool's Day is nigh. I think April Fool's became a permanent state of affairs on January 20th at noon, 2021. Officially April Fool's Day for so long as the resident is occupying the White House on days that he decides he doesn't want to stay in his basement in Delaware.
Well, I'm just hopeful that he remains alive for 4 years at least. And with that, we're gonna wish everybody a great afternoon. I'm glad that I've been running around for the past 2 days making sure that I could get to a spot where this broadcast would work well, and I appreciate your patience and the patience of our viewers in allowing me the opportunity to do that. It's always super annoying, and I don't know if anybody gets more annoyed than me when the broadcasts get disconnected, but huge thank you to our viewers, our sponsors, and everybody out there. Have a great afternoon. Charles, I'll see you on Sunday, and I will be back with lots more exciting videos from the road. Thanks for watching, everybody. Have a great day.